Ones, welcome back for the second session for the part number 1. So while waiting for the other student to join, maybe let's wait for another 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I know we are waiting for a couple of minutes, but I thought I will just say hi from Elaine before we start. And I can see that we're getting ready to start in a moment, but I'll just say hi to you guys. Hi. It's not so sunny in the UK today. A little bit grey, a little bit cloudy. So I'm hoping that you will be able to send some sunshine my way, students. I'll get my sunshine from you guys.
Sunny day today, very hot.
Oh, sounds lovely.
What time is it now in the UK?
It's 11 a.m., 11 in the morning.
Okay.
And traditionally at 11 o'clock in the UK, people call it 11s, because often people in the past, people used to stop for usually a cup of tea, maybe now a cup of coffee, and actually people don't tend to stop anymore because we all work much more flexibly. But in previous generations, it would be a traditional time for a cup of tea. So, and maybe a small snack, like a piece of fruit or a biscuit. Yeah, so we call it 11s. So it still has that idea around 11 o'clock, although you'd be struggling to find somebody taking a break at exactly 11.
Thank you for sharing.
You're more than welcome.
that is my first time heard about 11s.
Yeah. I think every country has these little things that are part of what everybody knows, but when you're learning about another country or learning another language, they don't get included on the curriculum or the syllabus because they're not really important. But sometimes it's quite nice to know about little things, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'll be quiet now. You know, English teachers like to talk a lot, so I'll be quiet now and I'll let you talk when you need to.
No problem. So let me spend like 5 minutes to talk a little bit about further studies and then study abroad. So let me start now. Okay. I think students here, you are doing in the high school or in the university. In some points after finishing whatever you are doing right now, the next point that you'll be considering it is further study. So if let's say further study, so a lot of questions will pop up in the mind that you're properly thinking where you are going to study, whether do it in your home country, in the local institutions or overseas. So let's say if talking about overseas, then which country will be your study destination? There's a lot of questions that come up in the in where that you are doing right now. So we can perhaps share you more information about today what you need to consider if you are considering to study abroad, and where the benefits of study abroad as well. Right. We have students here coming from mainly from Malaysia and also China. According to the data statistic published in 2019 from the Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia in 2019, we have 70,000 of students going study abroad. And that numbers are 10 times of for China, where we have 700,000 of China students going abroad for their further studies. And this destinations including the popular country, for example, USA, Australia, UK, New Zealand, Canada, China, Japan, South Korea, and some other country as well. So that list is going on and on. And for these students, when what are the determinants for them when they deciding to study abroad? These are the factors that we can basically group them into two categories. If we're looking at the first one academically, what the further studies abroad can offer to students, it is the first thing come as first is the better quality of education, as where your home country can offer to you. And further study can offer students be able to gain the global mindset and boost the employability. So when students graduate from the overseas university, they be able to get a very good global mindset, and also is highly desired by the employers. So when they graduate from the university, when they go into the working employments, then is highly desired. And studying abroad always offer a good practical works and experience for students. And in the perspective of personal development, it is they can offer students better perspective, like seeing the world. The world is big, and students coming from your home country, if you're flying to study abroad, that you'll be able to interact with people from different cultures, and that offers you intercultural development. And students be able to meet new friends and expand their networks, and that are very good development for students as well. Gain essential life skills, building resilience. I think not only the academic wise that can offer to students. When we're talking about studying abroad, the skill sets and the soft skills that students be able to gain coming from the study abroad are a lot more. Like student will you'll be able to learn something like time management, mixing with people coming from different backgrounds, improve your communication skills. These are the skills that are very useful when you're going into the employments later on. So that's why these are the reasons why students, when they consider to study abroad. I think the points of studying local and studying abroad comes in a lot of other reasons. And if you're considering study abroad, these are the things that students will need to consider. First, that would be finance. It is more to the budgeting. You need to compare the tuition fees and the living cost that if you're interested to study for a specific program in that country, you need to do more research, what the fees like and how much you need to budget if you're living in that country for throughout the whole duration you're studying in that country. Program stacks, you'll be looking very importantly the recognition status. So for example, the program that you're studying in that country, whether it is recognized when you come back to your home country to practice. It is very important whether you can be licensed later on. That particularly true for some professionals' career. For example, like lawyer, medicines, dentistry, pharmacy, for such. The duration involved, if you like to further study in that country. Requirement, academic reputation. The language that be using when you study in that country. For like example, if you're going to Germany, that would be using German. Going UK, that is using English. So that is another reason, the thing that you need to consider. Living situation, whether it is safe, the climate the weather, the foods, local cultures, and these are also very important to consider as well. And since today we hear also like to talk more about the study abroad, and then which country could offer you a very good quality of the education, but at the same time offer you a value of money, and the cost of studying is not that high. If we looking at this table published by HSBC a few years ago, they compare a few study destinations for student further study. And if you can see top of the league, Australia would be the most expensive if you are talking about the further studying abroad. Coming to the next is Singapore, United States, and UK coming to the fourth. That is the reasons why in traditions from many years ago until now, Malaysia students and Chinese students, we have many students going to UK to study because the cost, it is not very high, and the education quality is come as second. And this one, it is looking at the world top 100 university coming from that specific country. So United States has most the most number of the university in the top world 100 university, and the second we have UK. And if we looking at this, that it would be the average in general speaking. But if we looking at the specific country, there are other factors that drive the drive for the different of the fees as well. In general, public university is cheaper than the private university that can offer to you. Science programs are more expensive than arts and humanities program. And if the location also matters, suburb located university is generally cheaper than the urban university fees they can offer to you. And if we looking at UK, why students to choose UK as their study destination? These are the things UK further study can offer to students. They have a very high standard education quality. The qualification are widely recognized, meaning that if you graduate from UK university, the certificate that you get, you can work back in Malaysia or in China, or you can work any elsewhere in the world. It is widely recognized. Quick course completion. So as you compare the course completion duration, generally Canada, USA system would take a year longer than UK can offer to students. In that sense, it making the tuition fee and the living cost as a whole offered to students is cheaper. Geographically well placed, UK is here, so it is very close to the Europe country. So students studying in UK also can utilize this very convenience. Just by an hour to 2 hours of flight distance, they can travel and visit to like France, Netherlands, Germany. So that giving students a very good exposure as well. And in last year, UK government offers the 2 years graduate visa. That means that students finishing their degree or master program, they'll be able to stay over in the UK legally and look up for the jobs. And that is a very good chance, especially for UK. They out of the Europe country already, Brexit. So they very value highly the students with good talents to stay back in the UK to work. And this is to top up for the UK education quality. So the Nobel laureates, meaning the Nobel Prize winner that associate to that country, in UK, it comes as a second in the whole world. So UK, the education quality, it is one of the best in the world. Thank you for listening. So I'd like to pass the floor to Elaine to continue for the session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting for me to watch as well. So very interesting. Thank you very much for all that information as well. So we're going to think about listening today, and I want to share my slides with you, focusing on listening, and I will just do that now. So what we're going to do today, again, is to think about the information that I can give you about listening that you can then think about when you're using your listening, and you can put that into practice. So let me just click on that, because, you know, people my age, we can't do things involving technology without concentrating on what we're doing. And already I'm on the wrong place. So let's move up right to the beginning. So we'll think about what's involved with listening and developing our speaking skills. And we want to focus on the concerns, the issues, and so on, as well as developing the current skills that you've got already and coming on to your independence. And very much like we were talking about yesterday, it's up to you how much you put into your study and how far you will take your study, and if you want to develop your skills. So let's have a look at what's involved. Do you listen very carefully? Some people are very good at listening and some people are not so good. So we'll have an experiment, and I'm going to give you some information. It will take about 15 seconds for me to give you the information. Just listen to it, and then we'll think about sharing some information in the chat box. So the information I'm going to give you is a list of words, and those words are house, banana, glass, moon, crown, lion, aeroplane, jacket, tennis ball, 1,348,215. Okay, so let's go back to our chat box and see what we can remember from that information. So in the chat box, can you put any of the words that you can remember from that? So join the chat box. Jacket, house, cows. I don't think we had cows, but maybe we had a word. So that's interesting that we've got some really good information there, and some Lucy, 1,300,000 and something. I think lots of people are going to agree with you. So we've got lots of words there. Some of them, interestingly, for example, this word, grass, actually, as Loke has mentioned there, lion, moon, bananas, glass. It was glass, you're quite right. So glass, grass, it's quite difficult to tell the difference, isn't it, when you're listening, because all you've got is that sound. So the information I can tell you was house, and I think many of you have mentioned that, and banana. And I just mentioned one banana, and sometimes plurals can be difficult. And we're going to look at plurals next week, listening for plurals. I've already mentioned glass, moon was one I think some of you have mentioned. I didn't mention cows. I think cows were mentioned, but I did mention a crown, sort of thing that the queen or a king might wear. I mentioned an aeroplane. And that's an interesting one as well, because we don't always hear the difference between airplane and aeroplane. And aeroplane tends to be more British English than airplane, which is American English. So it's really important to remember the difference and which one you hear. Quinn has just mentioned jacket. Thank you very much, Quinn. That has saved me typing it. That was the next one in my list. Tennis ball. And then the number. Any suggestions on the number? Lucy mentioned 1 million something. Anybody hear the whole number? Long numbers are difficult, aren't they? So often when we're typing, we put in either a comma or a space. 34, yes, you're quite right. 34 came into it. It is 1 million. And then we didn't have 34 in itself, but we have a 348. So it's 1,348,215. And if we put those spaces into that number, that helps us to remember how we say it. So we say 1, and when we've got the space there, we say 1 million. And then we look at the 348, and then we have a space because it's thousands, and then 215. So 1,348,215. And some people are better at hearing numbers than other people. Okay, so we heard some information and everybody, I think, remembered some of the information. We're going to have 15 seconds now. I'll just get my stopwatch, which I've left over there. We'll have 15 seconds, and I'm going to show you a picture of some information and see how much you can remember when you just look at it for 15 seconds. So look and remember. Okay, what can you remember? Go to the chat box and see if you found it easier or more difficult to remember the information that you saw. Can anybody put any ideas into the chat box? I'll give you a moment. I think sometimes there is a little delay between the UK and you guys. Apple, umbrella, bowl, ping pong, horse, white shoe, motorcycle, clouds, lovely. So we've got lots there. And it may be that some of you, after the last one, you might have decided to take a photograph. I don't know, but we've got more information there. And let's go back to that information. We can see we had, you might have put table tennis or ping pong or bat. Any of those would be correct. We had a notebook and pen or paper, whatever you put. Grey clouds, rainy clouds, dark clouds, just rain would have been fine. A horse or a brown horse, motorcycle, a white shoe. You might also have called that a trainer. We often call that a trainer in British English. A bowl, an apple, an umbrella, and the number. And that might have been easier to remember because you can just focus on the image of the number and you don't have to remember how to say it. And that also takes quite a bit of brain power to think, how do I organize it when I say that number? So we can see there we've got commas in the spaces. So we would say 2,472,960. So that's great. So we might think about our learning styles. and think about whether we are audio or visual learners. It's really important to consider this in your learning because it will affect how you learn, and it should affect how you set yourself some learning challenges. So if we are audio learners, we can take information in very easily by listening, and we can remember that information very easily. If we are visual learners, if we read information or we see pictures, then we find it easier to learn that information. There's another kind of learning skill, which is a kinesthetic learning skill, which is connected with doing something and practicing. So, for example, learning to play the piano is a more kinesthetic skill, because if you play the piano using your fingers, you will get better. You can read a book about it, you can listen to piano music. Maybe you would learn to play the piano, but actually doing it, a kinesthetic movement, helps you much more. But for learning a language, we tend to, or we often use either audio or visual methods of learning. So it's important for you to think about what your skill is. And if we're so used to screens now and seeing images, then we can often find it difficult to focus on listening, even when we're thinking about listening in our own language. If we're thinking about another language, then it's even more difficult. So with our listening skills, there are often the same worries or problems or concerns that people have. In the chat box, can you just put some suggestions about what you find difficult about listening? Oh, Zulfadli, I noticed you put sneaker. We say trainer, but often sneaker is fine too. Thank you. I only just noticed that message. So Lucy has mentioned accents, and accents are a problem. They're a problem for British people as well as international students, but accents are difficult. Accents that you're not familiar with. And I think that's true. We're often more familiar perhaps with American accents sometimes than maybe a Scottish accent. Quinn, you've mentioned people talking too quickly. Yes, BG, too quickly. I can tell you, when British people learn another language, we complain that they speak too quickly because it's very difficult. Our brains have to do so much more work. It needs a little more time in another language. New words, heavy pronunciation. Yeah, I think I would agree with all of your suggestions that the speed sounds too fast. The words might all sound the same. Yesterday, we looked at words which might sound the same or different and have different meanings, and that can be really difficult. Maybe we don't understand all the words because they're not familiar. How can you practice something that you find difficult? We've got British or American English, or we don't understand the pronunciation. We're not sure what the topic is about. We're not sure what we need to hear. We might be nervous or stressed. On the left-hand side, it might be boring. And often, if we have a study book, it is boring. We don't want to listen to that. We want to listen to information we're interested in. That's what I would really suggest that you do. You focus on topics that you are interested in when you are practicing your listening skills. And if you have access to the internet, you have access to a lot of information in English that you can listen to. So I would really suggest to you think about what you're interested in and listen to information about that. Any listening is going to improve your understanding. If you can watch a movie in English and you can put the closed captions or the subtitles on the bottom so you can listen and read, that really helps with pronunciation difficulties, because maybe you didn't understand what they said when you listened, but when you read it, you can understand it. So then you become better at recognizing that word. It is important to remember that in IELTS there will be accents. IELTS is designed for speakers of English around the world. So that will include countries like Australia or America, and different countries in the UK. And they do have accents. However, those accents in the IELTS exam are not there for you to be tricked or find it impossible. They are there because they are probably understandable to people who can understand English. And certainly in the UK, sometimes if I'm talking to people who have a very strong accent, I find it difficult to understand them as well. If there was somebody with that kind of accent, they would not be part of the IELTS exam. So if you are talking to somebody in the UK, yes, that might be a problem, but for the IELTS exam, it shouldn't mean that you can't complete the exam. So the difficulties that people might have are the kind of difficulties that everybody has. So your worries or concerns are not unique. Everybody has them, so they can be overcome. So why should we improve? Why do you need to improve your listening skills? Any suggestions in the chat box? Oh, and somebody's put, hard to hear the London tongue. Yeah, there are lots of different accents in London, actually. And some of them are difficult for me as well. But remember, they won't be in the IELTS exam. So Sam has put to understand better and to communicate well. And yes, that's why you need to improve your listening, certainly. So we want to improve because we want to, oh, have we disappeared? Has my listening gone away? Let's get it back. Come on. I don't know why that's suddenly closed. I think it's coming back. Okay, we seem to be there. Let's see if we can find where we're up to. And why do we want to improve? Well, we want to improve so that we can understand, as Sam said. It's really important to enjoy our experiences. And as you were listening earlier about studying in the UK, if you're in the UK, you should take all the opportunities you have to take part in life in the UK, visit other places in the UK, also in Europe, to enjoy your time here in the UK while you're studying or while you're living here. And if you can understand people, it makes it much more enjoyable. And of course, we want to pass exams, and we want to pass exams with the best score we can possibly get. So we need to know how to get those marks. So what I will be focusing on are the skills that will help you to get those extra few marks in your IELTS exam. If you improve and you're able to do that, you're also going to improve your listening skills. So yesterday, we talked about B1 and B2 level in speaking. And there's the B1 and B2 level in listening as well. So we might already be at B1 level, but we want to get to B2 and higher in order to study at university in the UK. So B1, you can understand the main points of clear standard speech on familiar matters regularly encountered in work, school, and leisure. So you may not understand every word, but you can understand the main points and the familiar matters. So for example, work, school, leisure, that might be something to do with information about how to borrow a book from a library, how to order something in a shop, how to buy a train ticket to visit somewhere. Familiar kinds of topics that you often get in your study books. And in the IELTS exam, the first part of the exam usually focuses on that kind of information. You can, at B1 level, understand the main point of many radio or TV programs on current affairs or topics of personal or professional interest when the delivery is relatively slow and clear. Not very slow, but a normal level of speaking that isn't too fast. And it's usually too fast when people are chatting and they're excited. But in a TV program, usually the delivery is quite clear and at a reasonable pace if it's talking about current affairs or interesting topics. If it's a game show, it might be much more excitable, it might be much quicker, but we're not looking at listening to game shows for IELTS exams. It's very important to try and find information on the internet that might talk about current affairs or topics of interest. And already in the talk this morning, talking about studying in the UK and staying here possibly after completing your degree to find a job. Brexit was mentioned, so we have already left Europe in terms of being able to work and study in European countries. So that's something that is important for the UK. And Brexit is a topic which is very much current in news programs, how Brexit is affecting the UK at the moment. Another topic is the pandemic, how coronavirus is affecting the UK and the rest of the world, different things that we can do, different things that different countries may not be able to do. So it should be quite accessible for you. You should be able to find information on those topics. Other topics are the environment, climate change, education systems in different countries, and finding some information about that is really important to improve your listening. And also at the beginning, if you were here right at the beginning, I talked a little bit about the time and 11 o'clock and what people in the UK think about when they think about 11 o'clock in the morning. We usually think about something called 11s, having a drink and a small snack. Most of us don't do that, but we all know about it. And those are the sort of small things that you can listen to on the internet just to practice your listening skills. So when you extend those skills to the B2 level, then you can understand extended speech and lectures. And That's possibly a little bit more like today, where it's one person talking at length or for a long time on a topic. And at B2 level, you can also understand complex lines of argument as long as the topic is reasonably familiar. So we might think about climate change. That's a familiar topic. And there are a lot of complicated ideas about how we can change the way we live to try and affect climate change issues. And that's where you might have a familiar topic and some complex lines of argument. They might be talking about different scientific methods, and you could follow it even if some of the vocabulary was a little unfamiliar. At B2 level, you can understand most TV programs and current affairs programs. So most TV news and current affairs programs, again, you might be able to find some of those on the web, and that's really useful to be able to do. Also, you should be able to understand the majority of films in standard dialect. So again, if you're thinking about films, a lot of films don't use regional accents because a lot of films are made for worldwide global markets and consumption. So they're made so that most people can understand the conversations. So if you watch movies, and you might notice that I will use the word film more than movie because film is more British English. If you watch films or movies, it's always a good idea to have those subtitles or closed captions in English to improve your recognition of words and what they mean. So we're aiming to think about skill strategies that can get us to B2. So what can we do? Most of our worries or our concerns, though we're thinking about possibly extending our listening skills, but thinking about, oh, I'm worried that people talk too quickly, I'm worried about the pronunciation. In the meeting chat, what can you suggest that we do to improve our listening skills? So Sam said listening to podcasts. Absolutely, podcasts are a great way of improving your English. And you get all sorts of topics on podcasts. If you're able to access YouTube, yes, that's great. Music is good because you can listen to the words in the songs. Paying attention, yes, I think you're quite right. We don't always pay attention. Watching movies, yes, movies. So we've got some good suggestions. Radio, yeah. Most of our worries can be improved by just listening, and you've suggested lots of different ways we can listen to different things. Listening is really important, and practicing it and doing it in a way that you enjoy. So what can we listen to? As you have suggested, we've got song lyrics or music, we've got film dialogues or movies, TV programs that are in English, podcasts, celebrity interviews, news, radio, weather forecast. Weather forecasts are really good because they often speak very clearly and they use some information about adjectives on different kinds of weather, and that's a really good way of picking up some extra vocabulary. And also they talk about north and south and different days of the week. Audiobooks. So if you're not terribly keen on reading, or if you don't always have the time to sit down and read, you can listen to a book, or you can listen to a book and read it at the same time. instructions on how to do something. So sometimes there are instructions on the web about how to do something like maybe bake a cake, and that will give you some really useful vocabulary about sequencing. So we might have first of all, then, secondly, after that, meanwhile. So some of those words are really useful for you to put into your organizational vocabulary. And using subtitles or closed captions, sometimes it's called. And Lucy's mentioned listening to documentaries or politics, like presidential speeches. That's a really good idea as well. When we were in the UK last week, we had the COP26 environmental conference, and a lot of that was speeches which were translated into English. Because it was held in the UK, it was largely in English. So you might find some information on the web about that, which would be in English. Something that Lucy's also mentioned there is stuff in politics. And stuff is a word that we often use when we're chatting and we're having a conversation with our friends, and that's absolutely fine. If you're in an assessment, see if you can think about another word that you could use to avoid stuff. It's quite an informal word, so that's great for our chat box. But if we were going to think of another word to use in an assessment, instead of stuff, we might use a more specific word, such as topics in politics, like presidential speeches. So thank you, Lucy, for giving us that word stuff that I could mention as well. So do you listen? When you're listening to other people, or now even, what do you do when you're listening? Do you look out of the window? Notice here I've got look out of the window. That's very British English. American English would be look out the window. In British English, we have look out of the window. That's something I really love to do. I'm often looking out of the window when I should be listening. Do you check your phone? Or do you play with your hair? Or when you're listening, are you really thinking about what you want to say? Do you interrupt the speaker because you're not listening to the next thing they're going to say? Do you check your phone? Do you look at a friend across the room and say hi, or just kind of make eye contact with them? Do you think about what you want to eat? Do you check your phone? Do you send a message on your phone? We've all been talking to people, haven't we? And they're looking at their phone and messaging on their phone while they're supposed to be listening to us. Are they really listening? When you're listening to someone, are you just thinking about how boring they are? Especially if they're your English teacher. Are you checking your phone? Do you look in your bag for something? Do you check your phone? So checking your phone comes up a lot. We don't want to check our phones too much when we should be listening, because in the exam we won't be able to check our phone at all. So get into the habit of not looking at something, not looking out of the window, not looking at your phone, but just trying to focus on what's being said. But if you are an audio learner, that can be easier for somebody than someone who is a visual learner. And it can be easy to think about what kind of person you are when you're listening to somebody. If you are lost in a city and you need to ask for help, let's think about in your own language. So we're not worried about English, but in your own language. If you're lost and you ask for help, and somebody says to you, oh yeah, I know where that is. It's not too difficult. You're not far away. Just go down this road and you'll go around the bend. Once you get around the bend, you'll see some traffic lights, and you need to take the left-hand turning, go along there until you get to a crossing, and go over the crossing and down the side of the shop on the right-hand side, go around the shop and into the car park behind there. And once you get in the car park, if you look, there's a sign for a market. Follow the sign for the market. Can you remember what you have to do first? I find that really difficult. I know that I am more of a visual learner. If somebody showed me that on a map, or if somebody showed me that written down on a piece of paper, I would be able to remember it much more easily than just listening. So that's why it's important for you to think about what kind of learner you are. Because if you know you find it difficult to listen and remember in your own language, it will be difficult for you to listen and remember in any language. So we need to try and develop our listening skills. So we want to develop good habits, and we want to avoid bad habits like checking our phone. So I'm going to play you a little bit of information, and I don't want you to do anything. I want you to just relax and listen to that information. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to hear this in a moment. I want to play. Okay, I'm just going to pause it there. Can you put in your chat box if you heard the music at the beginning and if it was loud enough? You can hear, that's great. I will continue to play it, and I will mute my microphone as well. Thank you, guys.
Hello, Elaine. I think we can't hear you at all. Is that by any chance that you can look into the mic?
37% of people will be affected by dangerous heat waves at 2 degrees centigrade. That's
okay. Could you hear anything?
Yes, now okay already.
So when I played the video, you could hear the music and then you couldn't hear the talking?
Not music or any sounds at all.
Okay. Not to worry. What I'm going to do is, I thought it might be nice for you to hear a different voice and not my voice, but let me see if I can get the script for that and read it to you. Okay, hang on a moment. Okay, so it might be easier for everybody. Some people I think could hear, some people couldn't hear. So what I'll do is I will read it because I think everybody can hear me. So just relax again and I will read it. If you've heard some of this information already, don't worry, that's fine. If you haven't, I'm starting from the beginning. Okay, so I will start now. The planet's climate has constantly been changing over thousands of years. The global average temperature today is about 15 degrees centigrade. Scientists are worried that the planet is warming faster than ever before. The 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years, according to the World Meteorological Organization. If this trend continues, temperatures may rise by 3 to 5 degrees by 2100. Scientists say we should try and stop this trend and not allow the average global temperature to rise more than 1.5 degrees. But even a 2-degree rise would be bad for us all. Now, half a degree doesn't sound like much, but it could make a big difference to the planet. A 2-degree rise would mean that all the coral reefs disappear, but a 1.5-degree rise means that there would still be some. Also, 18% of all the insects on Earth will disappear if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees, compared to 6% disappearing at 1.5 degrees. 37% of people will be affected by dangerous heat waves at 2 degrees, which is twice the number compared to a 1.5-degree rise. Whether it's coral reefs, crops, floods, or the survival of species, scientists say everyone and everything is far better off in a world that limits the rise to 1.5 degrees. So what can we do? Scientists say that carbon will have to be sucked out of the air by machines and stored underground, and that these devices exist already. They also say that billions of trees will have to be planted. People should buy less meat. Of all the foods we eat, beef has the biggest impact on climate change because it produces a high amount of greenhouse gases. Also, someone suggested not buying new clothes too often because the fashion industry is a major source of greenhouse gases that are overheating the planet. And of course, using transport that doesn't burn fossil fuels, like electric cars, it's even better to walk or ride a bike. So that was the talk, and I'm going to put the link for that into the chat box. So if you want to look at that afterwards, you can do. Okay, so thanks, guys. I think you're right with the mic. It's difficult because last time I had the mic open and the students said that it was far too echoey if I had my mic open. So I thought maybe closing the mic would work. However, not to worry. If you want to look at that and listen to the different voice speaking, you've got the link there. So if we're thinking about that information, can you put in the chat box how much information you heard and if it was easy to remember? Do you think you could remember all the information that you heard? It's about global warming, yes. Can you remember any of the figures or the information or the numbers? Can you answer these questions? What is the current average world temperature? What has the last 22 years recorded? When might temperatures have raised by 3 to 5 degrees? What two things are given as examples of what we could lose as a result of a 2 degrees Celsius rise in global temperature? How many people might be affected by a 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in the temperature? And in the future, what two things should we consume less of? Are you able to answer any questions? Yes, use electric cars, suggestions to stop global warming, Half a degree might not seem like much, but it might make a big difference. As no more coral reefs, yes. Global warming and a rise in temperature of 1.5 degrees is okay. 2 degrees is very dangerous. Question number 6, beef, meat and clothes. You're quite right. We probably need a little more detail, don't we? So, for example, what has the last 22 years recorded? I'm not sure anybody has suggested that. So I'm going to leave these on the screen, and I'm going to give you the chance to answer those questions. So have a look at the questions. What is the current average world temperature? So current means now, doesn't it? What has the last 22 years recorded? So something has happened over the last 22 years. When might temperatures have raised by 3 to 5 degrees? And we're thinking about when might something have happened. That's talking about the future. 2 things that are given as examples of what we could lose as a result. One of you has already mentioned coral reefs might be affected. How many people might be affected by a 1.5 degree rise in temperature? And in the future, we've got beef, meat and clothes have been suggested as answers. So I'm going to, Sam, raised by the year 2100. Okay, let's check. I'll give you the information again, see if you can answer the questions. The planet's climate has constantly been changing over thousands of years. The global average temperature today is about 15 degrees. 15 degrees centigrade. Scientists are worried that the planet is warming faster than ever before. The 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years, according to the World Meteorological Organization. If this trend continues, temperatures may rise by 3 to 5 degrees by 2100. Scientists say we should try and stop this trend and not allow the average global temperature to rise more than 1.5 degrees. But even a 2 degree rise would be bad for all of us. Now, 0.5 degree doesn't sound like much, but it could make a big difference to the planet. A 2 degree rise would mean that all the coral reefs would disappear. But a 1.5 degree rise means that there would still be some. Also, 18% of all the insects on Earth will disappear if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees, compared with 6% disappearing at 1.5 degrees. 37% of people will be affected by dangerous heat waves at 2 degrees. That's twice the number compared to a rise of 1.5 degrees. Whether it's coral reefs, crops, floods, or the survival of species, scientists say everyone and everything is far better off in a world that limits the rise to 1.5 degrees. So what can we do? Scientists say that carbon will have to be sucked out of the air by machines and stored underground, and that these devices exist already. They also say that billions of trees will have to be planted. People should buy less meat. Of all the foods we eat, beef has the biggest impact on climate change because it produces a high amount of greenhouse gases. Also, someone suggested not buying new clothes too often because the fashion industry is a major source of the greenhouse gases that are overheating the planet. And of course, using transport that doesn't burn fossil fuels like electric cars. And it's even better to walk or ride a bike. So can you put any of the answers into the chat box? So those questions, can we answer them more easily now? I think we've already got the answer that we need for number 6 from UC Jan, but any more answers? So pop your ideas into the chat box. Yes, number 1, the average temperature is 15 degrees. And the highest global temperature recorded. If we look at number 2, what has the last 22 years recorded? Partly it's the highest temperature ever recorded, but it's also something else over the last 20 years, 22 years rather. It includes the highest global temperature. Number 3, raised by the year 2100, yes. Number 4, 2 things of examples of what we could lose. We've already had coral reefs. Anything else? Petra, highest increase in global temperature, yes. Actually, it's also, I'll put it in the chat box, the 20 warmest years. So that does include, as you mentioned, the highest recorded global temperature. Coral reefs and 18% of all insects. Quite right. Number 5, a little tricky. So we've got correct answers for 1, 2, 3, and 4 now. We've got the 18% of insects, which is good. Number 5, how many people might be affected by a 1.5 degree rise in temperature? %? I think you were quite right. You heard 30 something. But let me read it to you again. 37% of people will be affected by dangerous heat waves at 2 degrees. That's twice the number compared to at a 1.5% rise. So yes, maths there. Half of 37%. Yes, lakes for 18.5%. 37% is our original starting point, and twice as many at 2 degrees is 37%, so 18.5. So you didn't know you were going to do maths today as well, did you? And finally, 2 things we should consume less of. We've already had beef and clothes being suggested, and you might have put fossil fuel cars would be another possibility. So I think maybe it was a little easier when we knew what the questions were, when we knew what information we had to listen for. So some of the information that we heard, we could let it go past us because we knew we didn't need that information. Other pieces of information we focused on because we knew it was the question. And one of the really important things that we need to do to improve our listening skills is thinking about preparing and predicting. And we prepare and predict by looking at the questions. So when we look at the questions, then we know what kind of information we might need. Might we need a number? Might we need a word? Making relevant notes is important so that we're not trying to remember the information and listen for more information. Making notes can also help us to focus, so it's less easy to look out of the window or check your phone because you're busy making notes and keeping your focus on the listening. Listening for cues, and cues are important. You will find that there are cues. Everything that you listen to will have some information in it that tells you what is coming up. Are you coming to the end of this piece of information? Are you going to start a new piece of information? That's why we use words and phrases like firstly, after that, following on, so we can keep a track of where we are and we understand where we are in the conversation. We might need to listen for synonyms and antonyms. We talked about those yesterday with our speaking, and it's really important as well for our listening, because we may not have exactly the same words in the question as we have in the information. So, for example, one of the questions that we had, question number 1, what is the current world average temperature? The words you heard in the information are global average temperature today. So we need to know that global means the whole world, and we need to know that today and current mean the same thing or have very similar meanings. So it's really important to be able to understand the synonyms and antonyms easily. We also need to be able to move with the information, and those questions help us. We need to be aware of the next question information. So if we go back to those questions, when I'm listening, for example, if I'm listening to temperatures might have raised by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius. If I was listening for information for number 2, what has the last 22 years recorded? I'm listening for that. I'm aware that the next question is, when might temperatures have raised by 3 to 5 degrees Celsius? While I'm still listening for the information for question 2, if I then hear this information, I need to think, okay, I've missed question 2, move on. I need to focus now on question 3 and getting that right. If I just wait for question 2 information, it's not going to come now. So that's a question I haven't answered. I need to make sure I answer the others. You do not need 100% to pass IELTS. In IELTS, you're not going to pass or fail, and you're not going to get 100% because it's designed for students of all levels. So the first questions are usually easier. More people can answer those questions. Fewer people can answer the last few questions, and they are there to test people who have a higher level of English. So you're not going to get all the questions correct. That's fine. You need to make sure that you get all the questions you are able to get those correct, because those will give you your best result for your best level. So that's what we want to do. We've tried again, and I think we did improve. So we want to think about our preparation and our prediction. Preparing by listening to and reading the questions. You get time in the IELTS exam to look at the questions before you hear the information. So it's really important that you make the best use of that. Often in exams, we see that students have a minute to look at the questions and they just sit there and wait to listen. But actually, if you're looking at that information, you can start to predict, do I need to listen for a number, a date, an adjective, a noun, a verb? What kind of information? These words in the question, global, there might be words about international, worldwide, current, there might be a word like now or today, at the moment. So we need to be ready for all those different words. That's what you do when you are preparing to listen. You need to know what the topic is. You will see the questions and you will know what kind of topic you're dealing with. Is it information about buying a train ticket, borrowing a book, going to see a film? So it's really important to have that information so that you can prepare mentally. Yesterday we talked about vocabulary being locked in a dusty old vocabulary book, or having vocabulary in your working memory ready to be used like an open book. And you need to do the same for your listening. You need to start to think about the words that might be associated with that topic. At the same time, remember, it's a test of your English knowledge. So there might be a topic that is about a scientific method, and you might think, I don't know anything about science or this method of producing chemical equations. That's fine. It's not going to test your knowledge of technical specific words. It's going to test your knowledge of English. So it's going to be familiar words that have synonyms and antonyms, or it's going to be information that you can understand because of the context. So when we look at a weather forecast, like we have at the bottom there, we can predict what the weather is by looking at the evidence. If there are clouds in the sky, we know it may rain. If it's a hot, sunny day, we know that we may need to take water with us when we go out because it looks as though it's going to be hot and sunny all day. So we may need to take a hat with us or a pair of sunglasses. So we use the evidence that we have in front of us, and the evidence that we have that we are able to use for our listening, the evidence is there in the questions. So that preparation and prediction is really important. Cues and alternative vocabulary. Well, we've talked about words that look the same but are different. And we can see here cues, C-U-E-S, or singular C-U-E. A cue is like a hint or a prompt. It might prompt you. It's not a snooker cue that you might have if you're playing snooker or pool. It's not the stick that you hit the balls with. It's a different meaning, and it means something that will prompt you. Here is the answer. A really easy example of a cue is when you're listening to a teacher, and I know I do it myself without thinking about it. Often we use so or okay, and that's a cue to you that, right, we're moving on to the next section. I'm going to start now. So, okay, and that's a little signal to your brain. This next piece of information is different or important. A thesaurus. What's another word for a thesaurus? A thesaurus is like a dictionary, but it doesn't have meanings in it. It has lists of words. And you can see there's a picture there of a book called Roget's Thesaurus. You can get this as an app on your phone, and it will give you lots of synonyms and antonyms. So if you look at Roget's Thesaurus, that's the most well-known thesaurus. If you were looking in there at the word global, then you would have other words in the list like international, worldwide, all over the world, across the world. So it's a list of synonyms and antonyms. So that can be a useful thing to get into the habit of using when you are reading, writing, listening, speaking. Can't use it in your exam, but the more you use it before your exam, the better you are going to be at having that information in your head already, ready to be used. Every year in the UK before Christmas, we have a tradition where we have an advent calendar. And an advent calendar has 24, it's usually a picture with 24 windows. And when you open the window, you can see a Christmas picture behind it. Nowadays, people tend to have chocolate behind each window. But in the past, the olden days, long time ago in history, when I was a child, it used to just be a picture, a Christmas picture. And in my family, we used to guess what would be behind the picture. That was a way that we accidentally increased our Christmas vocabulary hugely, because we weren't allowed to guess the same as another person in the family, and we had to guess a different one to what was guessed the day before. So if we think about words associated with Christmas tree, with Christmas, we might think about Christmas tree, star, present, Father Christmas. Those aren't enough if you're in a competition for pictures behind the Advent calendar window. So we got very good at all the different words connected with Christmas, all the different Christmas foods, the different kinds of gifts, the different decorations that might go on a Christmas tree, the stars in the sky, the snowflakes, all sorts of Christmas animals, birds that we only see in the winter, all those sort of things. And it's the same thing that you can do. You can pick a topic and you can try and think of all the different words that you know associated with that topic and the words that have a similar meaning. So that will always help your speaking and your listening. You're ready to hear it. So we're going to develop our listening skills a little more, and I'm going to give you some information, and I want you to listen to it and complete the answers. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to complete this today. I think we're going to overrun slightly. So what I want to do is to have a look at the prediction that we might do. And then next week, when I see you on Tuesday, no, not Tuesday, we'll be speaking on Tuesday. When I see you on Wednesday next week, then we will have a look at this. So you can think about this over the next few days. So first of all, what do we need to do? We need to prepare and predict our answers. So these are the questions that I'm going to ask you to focus on next week. And we want to highlight what the key words are. I will show you this again next week. So if you lose it between now and next week, don't worry. But we're going to listen to some information. What do you think the information is going to be about? Put your ideas in the chat box. When you're listening to the information, what's the topic going to be, do you think? Any suggestions? Traveling, yes, excellent. Travel, some kind of travel, isn't it? We can see the first trip and what does it visit? So notice that it's not where, it's what. So it's probably not a place, but it might be a thing, like a building or a mountain or a beach. So it's a noun that we want here, not a place name. If we look at the next question, we've got what kind of transport can be hired on the first trip to reach the top of the volcano. So we can hire some transport to go up the volcano. So maybe we could hire a bicycle and cycle up to the top of the volcano. I don't think we can hire a boat to reach the top of the volcano. So we're going to have maybe a car, could be a car, couldn't it, to get to the top? So that's the kind of information we want to think about, what kind of transport. So you can be thinking now about kinds of transport you could hire to go to the top of a volcano. Could be a helicopter, but I think it's going to be difficult to hire a helicopter if you can't fly a helicopter. What happened to the old fortresses in the ceramic producing inland town? So something happened in the past. Do you have to buy your own food and drinks on the second day? So we want to listen to information about the second day. That's probably going to be a yes or no answer. How can you get to this island? How do we normally get to islands? It's going to involve water, so it's not going to be a car. What's the population of Palermo? We're going to need a number there, aren't we? Population is the number of people living somewhere. And when the village of Castel di Tusa was a fishing village. So we're thinking about when it was in the past a fishing village. Was it popular then in the past? Is it popular now? Was it then? And then we're going to find out how much it will cost to visit the volcano, the Greek temples, and Palermo. So we want to listen to information about prices for volcano, Greek temples, and Palermo. And we will do that next week. So next week on Tuesday, I'm going to talk to you more about speaking. And then on Wednesday, we'll focus on listening. So we'll be looking at those questions to begin with on Wednesday and listening to the information that will help us to answer them. And on Tuesday, we're going to think about speaking topics. And we started looking at holidays and traveling, didn't we? And the kind of vocabulary that might be involved with that. So I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday for another focus on speaking, and I'll look forward to seeing you on Wednesday as well to complete the answers for those questions. And you can think about those over the next few days. If you want to take a photograph of those questions, let me just share that with you again. Okay, so is it going to share? Yes, it's a little slower, but it's sharing, I think. Share. Okay, I'm sharing my screen and you should be able to see those questions. So if you want to take a photograph or a screenshot of those questions, you can do, but don't worry about it too much. We've lost them, there we are. Don't worry about it too much because I will show those to you as well next week when we're listening. So if you've lost them, that's fine. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and I hope you have a good week next week. I want to stop sharing that so I can say goodbye to you. And I look forward to seeing you next week. I hope you have a good weekend. And I don't think I have anything very exciting planned for this weekend, but if anything exciting happens, I shall let you know about it next week. Take care and goodbye, guys. Lovely to see you. Bye.
Thank you, Miss Elaine, and thank you everyone staying with us. So next week, Tuesday, we'll be having our third section on the same time, 7 o'clock, and you can access to the meeting room with the same link again. So hope to see you guys next week. Enjoy the week. Thank you. Bye-bye. Good evening.